So I want to talk about gait patterns and walking and gait analysis for a minute. I've heard some really interesting conversations recently and just wanted to add my 2 cents. So there are many ways to walk, and from many, many different perspectives, for many different purposes. Most of the studies that have been done on walking, and there have been done a lot of studies, it's it's a subject that's been studied in great depth, but usually from a very limited and specific perspective. And there's a couple hidden assumptions in most of the perspective that's looked at walking. One of the assumptions is that there's one correct way to walk for everybody, all the time. The other assumption is that people naturally walk the same way. They use the same gait pattern and sequence firing, etc., etc. I disagree with that for a number of reasons. One is that often our studies look at efficiency, and they're specifically looking at mechanical efficiency. But mechanical efficiency is not the only parameter that's important, whether with humans or with animals. Efficiency is a meaningless term unless you define what you're trying to be efficient for. So there was a great study that came out recently about stealthy walking among cats. And lo and behold, they demonstrated that stealth walking is incredibly inefficient from a mechanical perspective, because that's not what it's designed to be efficient for. It's designed to be efficient for stealth, for invisibility, for silence. At the end, if the cat is successful, it catches prey, eats it, and gets a much bigger energy reward than it might have saved by being more mechanically efficient. So obviously, if you think about a panther stalking prey versus a gazelle running away from the panther, their mechanics are very, very different, and they're designed for different purposes. So even if we're just talking about mechanical efficiency, there's a whole lot of other factors that we need to take into play. And some of that mixes with intent and strategy. But are we trying to be mechanically efficient for speed? Are we trying to be mechanically efficient for distance? For power? If it's power, am I carrying something heavy? Am I pushing something heavy? Am I dragging something heavy behind me? Your body should be able to respond to all those situations differently. They require different things. What is the terrain you're walking on? Is there an incline, a decline? Is there a side slope? What is the substrate that you're walking on? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it slippery, or does it have good grip? Your walking mechanics need to change for each of these situations. Obviously the footwear you're wearing is going to influence that. The geometry of the foot. What is the shape of the metatarsal heads? Is my big toe longer, first and second the same, or is the second toe longer? That will change the compensation patterns that have to happen. And one may be more efficient than the other, but it's unavailable, depending on, we have what we have. So the rest of the chain is going to have to compensate. The relative limb length, how long are my arms and legs compared to my torso, that'll affect the firing sequence because it affects how we dissipate momentum. So, and that doesn't even get into the emotional and psychological effects on posture and therefore on the gait pattern. There's questions about, where and how are you initiating the primary impulse for kinetic energy? How are you dissipating it? There are switches. There are 3 primary planes of motion, and any one of them can be emphasized depending on situational needs and on quirks of the person's individual mechanics. So there's conscious variations and there's unconscious variations. And part of the goal for me is to turn all the unconscious variations into conscious options. Each of them will be appropriate at different times, some more than others, but it's a very rich practice. It's always important, just like with anything, we want to establish a baseline, both for diagnostics when you're watching somebody walk and assessing their gait pattern, or when you're walking yourself in your practice, or for self-assessment, or for meditation, or however you're doing it. You want to establish a baseline pattern. But then there's valuable deviations from baseline. And so the question is the deviation an appropriate response to situational demands, to the environment, to a changing intent, or any number of factors, or is it in response to pain, injury, restriction in the body? It's a very different issue. That's enough for now. Enjoy your practice, and I'll catch up with you soon.